He asked for sweet tea, politely, softly, and the waiter rolled his eyes. Mocked the way he spoke. Told the bartender, loud enough to hear, probably gonna tip with change if anything. But when the regional manager showed up and greeted the quiet man with a hug and a welcome, back Mr. Rhodes, the whole room went still. Because the man they dismissed as nobody owned every single location on the map. The lunch crowd buzzed like a low hive, forks clinking, chairs scraping, laughter rising from big corner booths, padded with co-workers on break, and moms juggling sippy cups. Near the host stand, the floor manager gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, scribbled something on a clipboard, and waved the next guest in without looking up. Langston Rhodes stepped through the door quietly, no entourage, no briefcase, just a navy sport coat over a pale linen shirt, jeans clean and pressed, shoes with a soft shine. He moved with the calm of someone who had nothing to prove, and everything to observe. "Just one?" the hostess asked, barely glancing up from her screen. "Yes," he replied. "Corner booth, if possible." She frowned for a half-second like that was too much to ask during a lunch rush, but nodded and led him past the noise. A server in a half-buttoned apron brushed past with a tray of sweet tea glasses rattling like dice. Booth 14. Near the window, quiet. Langston slid in without a sound. Minutes later, the waiter appeared, skinny, sharp-jawed, with a smirk that arrived before he did. His name tag read Chase, written in bold blue Sharpie, like he'd done it himself. He didn't take out a notepad. "You ready?" he asked, tone flat. Langston nodded once. "Sweet tea, and the fried okra starter, please." Chase raised an eyebrow, tapping his pen against the edge of the table. "That all?" "For now," Langston said calmly. "All right," Chase muttered. "Be out in a few." He turned before the last word was finished, already shaking his head. At the bar, he leaned in close to the bartender, voice just low enough to pretend it wasn't meant to be heard. "Man ordered okra and sweet tea like it's a food stamp special." The bartender snorted. "Table 14. Yup. Watch. He's gonna leave 2 quarters and a prayer." Langston heard it all. He didn't flinch, just folded his hands on the table and stared out the window. The sky outside was clean blue, with a few clouds drifting lazy like they had nowhere better to be. His reflection in the glass didn't show any emotion. That was on purpose, because this wasn't about tea, or okra, or even tips. It was about tone, assumption, quiet contempt delivered like it was seasoning. The food came quickly. The plate was hot, the tea sweating down the side of the glass. Chase dropped it on the table without a word. No enjoy, no eye contact. Langston picked up a fork, took a bite, savored it slowly. It wasn't the okra he was tasting. It was the temperature of the place, the way people moved when they thought no one important was watching. And the man they'd dismissed? He was just getting started. The blender roared behind the bar, drowning out part of the lunch chatter, but not enough to muffle tone. Chase leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, gaze flicking toward booth 14, with that sideways grin people wear when they think they're clever and safe. "He ordered okra," he said, lips barely moving. "Just okra, and sweet tea. What is this, Grandma's kitchen?" The bartender chuckled, towel slung over one shoulder. "Table 14. Yup. Watch, he'll sip that tea for an hour, and tip me in nickels. These types never leave more than loose change." Whole smile, and nod routine like they're being polite. "But it's all for show." He said it loud enough to be heard, and just quiet enough to pretend he didn't mean it that way. Langston didn't look up. He kept stirring the ice in his glass, slowly, the spoon clinking once, twice, like a metronome. His posture didn't shift. His face didn't move, but his ears caught every syllable. The bartender lowered his voice slightly. "Still better than the guy at 8. Sent his burger back twice, like he's Gordon Ramsay." "Yeah, well at least that guy tips," Chase muttered, then added, "Man came in looking like a retired teacher, and ordered like he's still living on the meal plan. Probably gonna leave some church pamphlet in the check." Langston took another sip, let the tea rest on his tongue a moment before swallowing. Not bad, a little heavy on the sugar, but cold enough to distract from the heat starting to press behind his ribs. He glanced around the restaurant. Nothing fancy, but intentionally designed to feel like Southern comfort. Warm wood panels, chalkboard specials, with friendly cursive, a welcome home sign hanging near the kitchen door, all branding, all part of the original vision, a vision that now felt like window dressing. A server laughed too loud near the drink station. A toddler dropped a crayon, somewhere near the back. Someone said, "Who owns this place anyway?" and got a shrug in return. Chase passed by again, this time with a tray of pulled pork sliders and fries. He didn't even look Langston's way, just moved past him like a shadow, like nothing worth remembering had ever sat in that booth. Langston blinked once, slowly, the kind of blink that doesn't mean sleep, it means patience, the kind of patience that comes before a storm. He had built this place from the bones up, recipes from his grandmother's kitchen, hours spent on food trucks in the rain, the first loan co-signed by a friend who believed in him. And now, this theater of carelessness. He didn't need to raise his voice, not yet. Some things were better handled in silence, especially when the room thinks you don't matter. Let them perform, let them reveal themselves. Langston just listened, and waited. The okra was crisp, seasoned right, just enough heat to wake up the tongue but not enough to demand attention. Langston ate slowly, not because he was savoring it, though he was, but because silence was a kind of tool, and he had learned long ago when to sharpen it. The check came folded inside a faux leather booklet. No thank you, no smile, just dropped on the table like a receipt at a gas station. Chase didn't even pause, just kept walking, tray tucked under his arm like he couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. Langston unfolded the bill. The numbers were small, didn't matter. He pulled out 2 crisp 20s and laid them inside. Then, with the pen they'd left in the check holder, he signed slowly. Langston Rhodes. No flourish, no extra loops or theatrical initials, just a steady, practiced hand writing a name that had once been stamped on every franchise contract in the state. He closed the booklet, set it at the edge of the table, and stood. No rush, no announcement. He adjusted the cuff of his shirt and walked out without a backward glance. Behind the bar, the bartender spotted the closed checkbook and slid it over. He cracked it open, counting the cash with one hand. "Hey, he actually tipped," he said, half surprised. "Almost 40%. Chase looked up from the soda fountain. "What? For okra and tea?" "Yup." The bartender held up the signed slip. "Langston Rhodes. That name sounds familiar." Chase leaned in. "What? Like your cousin's ex?" The bartender didn't laugh. He squinted at the name, lips moving silently. "Wait a minute." He turned and walked toward the POS screen, typing something fast. Pulled up the internal newsletter from last quarter, still bookmarked. Scrolled past the top articles, until he found it. There, a black and white headshot. Same calm face, same unreadable eyes. Langston Rhodes, founder and CEO of Southern Table Group, home of Rhodes Roadhouse, Sweet Bell Cafe, and Ellie Mae's. The bartender stared at the screen, then back at the signature. "No way," he muttered. "No freaking way." He walked back slowly, heart thudding in his chest. Held the receipt up to the light, like the ink might tell him something else. Chase smirked again. "What? You think that was him?" The bartender hesitated. "Man, it was him." Chase blinked. "The Langston Rhodes." The bartender nodded. Slow. "Yup." But Chase just waved it off. "Come on. Why would the guy who owns a whole restaurant chain be sitting here eating okra and sweet tea by himself?" The bartender didn't answer, but deep down, something twisted, because he'd seen the face, heard the name, and now he was wondering one thing he really didn't want to ask. What exactly did he hear while he was sitting here? And worse, what happens next? The buzz of the dining room had settled into a comfortable hum, forks scraping plates, ice shifting in glasses, the occasional burst of laughter from table 6 where a group of nurses swapped stories between bites of chicken and waffles. Chase leaned against the bar, sipping soda from a plastic cup, still unconvinced. "I'm telling you," the bartender muttered, eyes flicking toward the front doors. "That was him."
Chase shrugged.
"Sure, and I'm the mayor." Then the doors opened. The breeze caught the corner of the welcome mat. A man in a pressed grey suit stepped through, eyes scanning the room like he wasn't here to eat. Clipboards under one arm, branded polo tucked clean into iron slacks. His pace wasn't fast, but it had purpose. It took exactly 3 seconds for the floor manager to freeze. "Evan?" she whispered. "What's he doing here?" Chase frowned. "Who?" The bartender's eyes went wide. "That's Evan Locke, regional." Chase stood up straighter. Evan didn't slow down. He beelined straight toward booth 14, and even though it was empty now, He glanced around like looking for someone he already knew. Then he turned. Langston was near the hallway, just re-entering the dining room from the restroom. The light caught his face at the right angle. Evan's entire demeanor shifted. "Mr. Rhodes," he said, voice lifting with sudden brightness.
"Sir, wow.
"I didn't know you were stopping by today." Langston smiled, small and polite. Didn't want a crowd. They shook hands, firm, familiar, like this wasn't the first time. The floor manager hurried over, nerves etched across her forehead. "Good afternoon, Mr. Locke. Everything okay?" Evan turned to her. "All business now."
Did we know Mr. Rhodes would be dining with us?" She blinked.
No sir, I didn't see him come in." Chase felt something cold crawl up his spine. Langston just nodded toward the booth. "Had a craving for okra. Thought I'd stop by. Keep it quiet." "Well," Evan said, glancing at the staff, "you picked a good day for it. We're running smooth, mostly." Langston didn't respond, just looked slowly around the room, like seeing it for the first time, or maybe seeing past it. Evan followed his gaze. "Would you like to speak in the office?" he asked, suddenly softer. Langston nodded once. "I would." As they walked off, the energy in the room shifted, like a plug had been pulled, and everyone felt the drop in pressure.
Chase stood behind the bar.
Not moving, not blinking. The name on the receipt. The man in the booth. The founder. He wasn't some retired teacher. He was the one who signed the paychecks for everyone in that building. And Chase had just mocked him, twice. Loudly. He swallowed hard. And for the first time all shift, he didn't know what to do with his hands. Chase didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even blink. The hallway door swung back open. And there he was. Langston Rhodes, standing beside the regional manager like it was the most normal thing in the world. Calm. Steady. Still in that navy sport coat. Still unreadable. Evan scanned the dining room, then motioned toward the bar. "Let's talk to the team." Chase straightened his apron. His hands felt too big, like they didn't belong to him anymore. The bartender set his towel down slowly, every motion deliberate now, controlled. Langston walked toward them, each step as quiet as the last. But now it sounded different. Now every footfall felt like a drumbeat. Evan spoke first. "Mr. Rhodes had lunch here today. Alone. Undercover," he added, voice tightening around the word. He wanted to get a feel for the experience without anyone putting on a show. Langston didn't nod, didn't smile, just let the weight of it settle in. Chase tried to recover, voice cracking slightly. "Sir, I didn't realize. If I'd known." Langston cut his eyes toward him. Not sharp. Just still. "Is that how you treat people you don't recognize?" he asked, voice quiet, measured. Chase's mouth opened, then closed. "I just meant, some days we get a lot of, traffic." Evan turned to Langston. "Sir, was everything satisfactory? The food, the service?" Langston looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "Depends on what you're asking about." Evan blinked. Langston folded his hands in front of him, almost relaxed. "The okra was good. The sweet tea, bit heavy on the sugar, but serviceable." Chase exhaled, just barely. "But if you're asking about respect," Langston added, gaze shifting, "about how your people treat guests who look like they won't tip well, or speak softly, or wear clothes that don't scream money." He let it hang. The silence thickened. "Then no," he said. "Not everything was satisfactory." Evan nodded slowly, the color draining from his face. "Understood." Langston turned toward Chase. "You said something about a food stamp special." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "And that people like me don't tip." Chase looked like he wanted to crawl behind the bar. Langston didn't flinch. "What else don't people like me do?" Nothing, sir." Chase stammered. "It was a joke. I wasn't." Langston held up a hand. "Not angry. Just done. I built this company on the belief that hospitality wasn't just a smile. It was a standard. And today that standard broke before I took my first bite." Then he looked at Evan. "We're going to have a conversation. In the office. About training, culture and accountability." He turned back to Chase. "And afterward, you and I, we'll have one too." And just like that, Langston walked away. Not loud, not fast, but the sound of his shoes on that tile felt like the echo of a brick dropped in water. And Chase, he was already drowning. The office was small, file cabinets stacked high, a corkboard cluttered with shift swaps, and half-peeled motivational posters. One said teamwork makes the dream work, in faded blue. Another had a cartoon fork smiling too hard. Langston stepped inside without a word, and took the chair farthest from the desk. Evan followed, closing the door quietly behind them. Langston didn't sit like a man making a scene. He sat like a man preparing a ledger. "Show me your last 3 months," he said. Evan blinked. "Of what exactly?" "Staff evaluations, turnover rates, customer feedback, internal incident reports. Everything that paints a picture of how this store's been running when no one's watching." Evan hesitated, then moved to the computer. His fingers hovered for a second, then began typing. He clicked through tabs, pulling up spreadsheets, PDFs, surveys. Langston watched without interrupting. The silence between clicks grew louder. Langston finally leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "You've had 7 resignations in 8 weeks. 3 marked lack of support. 2 said toxic culture." Evan nodded, jaw tight. "Yes, sir. It's been a challenge. We've been short-staffed." Langston pointed at the screen. "Short-staffed is a symptom, not a root." He scanned further. Customer complaint logs show a spike. Comments like "rude server," "uncomfortable atmosphere," and staff rolled their eyes when I asked for help. "That doesn't come from nowhere." "No, sir," Evan said again. "It doesn't." Langston's voice didn't rise. "You know how many stores we've opened since 2018? Evan didn't answer. 47, Langston said. "Every one of them under the promise that Southern comfort isn't just a flavor, it's a feeling. And I wrote that mission statement, myself, at a folding table in my garage." He stood now, slow and deliberate, walked over to the corkboard, pulled one pin out, and let a flyer fall to the ground. "When you franchise heart, you have to guard the soul." Evan turned from the screen. "Sir, I understand." Langston cut him off. "No, you don't. Not yet." He turned to face him fully now. "Because I didn't just invest in buildings. I built stories, neighborhoods, second chances. I hired people who'd been told no everywhere else. I named this company after my grandfather, who worked 2 jobs, and still brought food home for strangers." Evan swallowed hard. "I didn't know that." Langston stepped forward. "Now you do. And now you're going to tell me, honestly, how this location slipped." Evan sighed. "Complacency. We stopped paying attention. Some of the good ones left. Some of the bad ones stayed, and we let it happen." Langston nodded once. "Then we rebuild." He looked toward the door. "After this, I'm talking to the staff, and I won't need notes or a title to do it." Because now they knew who he was, and the audit had just begun. Langston stood near the office window, hands folded behind his back, watching as a delivery truck reversed into the lot. Boxes of produce, some likely bound for tonight's specials, shifted in the back, thudding against the metal walls. The sound was dull, distant, but familiar. He didn't turn when he spoke. "You know why I came, Evan?" Evan sat at the edge of the desk, eyes lowered. "To check in." Langston shook his head once. "No." He finally turned, his voice quiet but firm. "I came because people who loved this place started walking away from it." Evan didn't speak. Langston moved toward the desk, pulled out a folded sheet of paper from his inner coat pocket, set it gently on the table. A letter, from a former server named Alondra, said she used to love working here, said it felt like community, like someone cared if you were having a bad day. He pulled out a second paper. "This one's from a customer. Vietnam vet. Used to eat here every Tuesday. Said it felt like coming home." A beat passed, and then Langston continued. Both letters ended the same way. "Something's changed. The food still tastes good, but the people don't." Evan swallowed hard. Langston looked him in the eye. "When I started Rhodes Roadhouse, it wasn't to make millions. It was to give folks a place that felt like family, where please and thank you weren't extras, they were seasoning, where a server would see someone eating alone and ask, 'How's your day?' Not because it was policy, but because it was human." He stepped back, letting the silence stretch. "But lately," he said, quieter now, "I've been hearing things that tell me we lost the plot. That the brand's still clean, but the soul's leaking out. Evan nodded slowly, shame in every line of his face. Langston glanced toward the hallway beyond the door. The chatter had quieted. News was spreading. "I didn't come to catch anyone," he said. "I came to feel if the story still lived here, if the kindness, the dignity, the purpose still had a seat at the table." He tapped the table once, deliberate. "And what I got," he said, "was a side of okra and a front row seat to disrespect." Evan shifted, clearing his throat. "So what happens now?" Langston tilted his head slightly. "Now, we remind people what this place was built for. Not speed, not numbers, not fake smiles, but real, simple, human grace." He opened the door. "Tell the team to gather." His voice didn't rise, but this time it didn't have to, because Langston hadn't just walked in to inspect. He'd come to reclaim what was his. The dining room was quieter now. The rush had passed, and the clatter of plates gave way to soft footsteps and cautious whispers. Chairs scraped as the front-of-house staff gathered near booth 14, the same booth Langston had sat in just an hour earlier. No one quite knew where to stand. Some leaned against counters, others hovered near the service station, arms crossed, pretending they weren't nervous, but they were. Langston didn't stand on a platform, didn't raise his voice. He stood right where he had eaten. "This morning," he began, "I came in alone. I asked for a booth and a glass of sweet tea. I ordered okra." Chase looked down instantly, jaw tight. Langston continued, steady. "I was served by someone who didn't make eye contact, who dropped my check without a word, who later said," he paused, glancing around, "Man ordered okra and sweet tea like it's a food stamp special." The words hit like cold water. Chase's face went pale. Langston's tone didn't change. Then came the joke about me tipping in nickels. And the comment, "These types never leave anything." That one came from behind the bar. The bartender shifted his weight, eyes fixed on the floor. Across the room, servers looked at each other, no longer casual, no longer distant. Unease cracked through the group like glass under strain. Langston took a slow breath. "I didn't come here to fire anyone today. I came to listen. And what I heard," he said, "was smallness, small minds, small hearts. And in this place," he shook his head. "That doesn't work." He let that land. A young hostess near the edge of the group glanced nervously toward Chase. Someone coughed. "This restaurant carries my grandfather's name," Langston said. "It was built to serve food with dignity, not just for customers with money, not just for people who look a certain way, for everyone. Because food is love, and you don't serve love while looking down on people." Chase opened his mouth slightly, then closed it again. Langston didn't look angry. He looked tired, disappointed. And that was worse. "I wasn't looking for perfection today," he said. "I was looking for soul." He scanned the group. "Some of you still carry it. I felt it in the kitchen. I saw it in the eyes of one or two servers, who looked unsure when the joke started. But the rest of you," his voice lowered, "you let the culture rot and called it customer service." Silence. Then he stepped back. "I'm not asking for apologies. I'm asking for reflection." He nodded once. "Take the night to think. Because tomorrow morning, I'll be back. And we're going to decide who still belongs here, and who never did." No yelling, no threats, just wait. And suddenly, the man they thought was nobody, was the only voice in the room that mattered. Langston stayed where he was. No stage, no podium. Just booth 14 and the truth. "You know how this place started?" he asked. Voice even, eyes sweeping the quiet room. "Not with investors, not with polished menus or branded uniforms." He paused. "It started with a dented food truck I bought off Craigslist. No heat, no power steering. I painted the name on the side myself with 2 cans and a foam brush. Someone near the drink station shifted. I sold cornbread out the back of that truck." Langston continued, "Using my grandmother's recipe. Ellie Rhodes. She used to say, 'A little sweetness can hush a bitter day.' That was her magic." His voice softened, but didn't lose weight. "I parked that truck at church festivals, high school parking lots, outside construction sites during lunch break, rain or shine, just me and a hot plate." He let that hang for a moment. No branding team, No social media, just a promise. Treat people with dignity, serve food with care, and never assume a man's worth based on his shoes or his voice. He folded his arms across his chest, not defensive, rooted. When the first restaurant opened, it wasn't supposed to be a chain. It was supposed to be a place where people could breathe, where the woman on her lunch break and the man who just got out of prison could sit 2 booths apart and feel the same thing. Welcome. A beat passed. And somehow, he said, we let the wrong things grow louder. Ego, mockery, that fake laugh you give to someone's face and roll your eyes behind their back. Chase didn't move. The bartender stared straight ahead. This place wasn't built for that, Langston said. It was built from scraped knees and second chances. My first dishwasher was a man who'd just finished a 10-year sentence. My first hostess was 16, raising her siblings. My first cook was a vet with one arm who could flip a skillet better than anyone I've ever met. He looked out across the room, not angry, anchored. This place was never about 5 stars. It was about one rule: you don't look down on people while feeding them. Someone near the register whispered, down under their breath, but not sarcastic, reverent. Langston took a step toward the center. So if you thought this was just a job, or a logo, or a paycheck, hear me now. This is a promise. One we've been breaking. He tapped the side of the booth gently. But I didn't build this from scratch just to let it rot from the inside. Silence again. Except this time, it wasn't fear holding their tongues. It was the weight of history, and the question hanging in the air. What will you build next? Now that you know what this place was built for. Langston walked to the counter without ceremony. No grand speech, no dramatic pause, just quiet motion, backed by a lifetime of meaning. He placed 2 envelopes down side by side. Simple white, unlabeled. This one, he said, tapping the envelope on the left, is for anyone who wants to stay, who believes in what this place was meant to be, and is willing to work to get it back. He tapped the second. And this one's for those who don't. The room stilled. Not tense, just alert, like everyone had suddenly leaned forward without moving. Langston looked out across the staff, servers, bussers, hostesses. The bartender with his arms now folded tight. Chase, still lingering near the side wall, quiet for the first time all shift. I'm not here to beg, Langston said, voice steady, and I'm not here to punish. He tapped both envelopes again, soft and deliberate. This isn't about yesterday, it's about tomorrow. He stepped back from the counter, giving the space weight. If you choose to stay, he said, you'll recommit, not to me, to the standard. You'll be part of rebuilding this house, not just working in it. A few heads nodded slowly. One server shifted her stance, like she'd just exhaled for the first time all day. Langston continued, and if you choose to leave, that's okay too. You'll finish your shift, collect your final check, and leave with my thanks for the time you gave. No shame, no judgment. He looked toward Chase, but not only at him. But if you stay and keep treating people like they're beneath you, if you stay and still think kindness is optional, then you're not staying. You're squatting. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with clarity. Langston stepped away from the counter. You have until the end of the day to decide, he said. No meetings, no explanations. Just sign the paper inside your envelope and slide it under the office door. He gave a faint nod. That's all. Then he turned and walked toward the window, back to booth 14, sat down where he started. No clipboard, no notebook, just his eyes, watching, not as a boss, but as a man who'd poured soul into something, only to find it hollowing out, and who still believed it could be filled again, one choice at a time. Langston slid back into booth 14. The seat was still warm from before, but the air felt different, lighter somehow, like the tension had thinned just enough to let something real breathe again. He didn't pull out his phone, didn't sip anything, just sat, watching, and the shift was immediate. A young hostess straightened her spine and greeted a couple at the door with full eye contact and a genuine welcome in. A server refilled a water glass before the customer had to ask. Someone near the kitchen passed by and actually smiled. Not forced, not for show, just present. It wasn't perfect, but it was effort, and effort meant something. Chase stood behind the bar, arms folded, eyes flicking toward Langston more than once. He looked like someone trying to figure out if the ground beneath him was solid, or just pretending to be. Finally, after a few long minutes, he wiped his hands on a towel, walked over, and stopped beside the booth. Langston looked up. Didn't speak, just waited. Chase cleared his throat, then said, "Sir, I just wanted to say." He paused, swallowed. "I didn't know who you were," he admitted. "But that shouldn't have mattered. What I said earlier wasn't right." His voice was quieter now, smaller, not weak, but stripped of the armor he'd worn all shift. "I was being lazy, with my attitude, with my words, and I'm sorry." Langston studied him for a moment. No judgment in his face, just stillness. Then he nodded once. "I hear you." Chase exhaled, just a little, but Langston wasn't finished. "Now let your next 100 guests feel it." Chase blinked. "Sir." Langston leaned back slightly. "Words are easy. Change is hard. If you mean what you said, it won't show in this booth. It'll show in every booth." Chase nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." Langston's gaze softened. "Just a touch. Do it right. And someday someone might sit here and say, 'That waiter made my whole day better.' Not because you knew their name, but because you treated them like they mattered." Chase stood a little straighter. "I'll do better. Promise." Langston gave the smallest of smiles. "Not indulgent. Earned." "Good. Start with the woman at table 6. She's been waiting for breadsticks for 12 minutes. Chase turned fast, nearly bumping a chair on the way. Langston watched him go. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a seed, and he knew something about seeds. You plant them in broken ground, not perfect soil, because growth only happens where change takes root. 3 weeks later, the front door chimed with that familiar jingle, soft and low, like wind through an old screen door. Langston stepped inside. Same coat, same calm, but this time no disguise, no lowered brim, no hidden test. He walked past the host stand, now manned by a sharp-eyed teen, who stood and smiled like she meant it. "Welcome to Rhodes," she said. "We're glad you're here." Langston nodded, let her lead him to a booth. Not 14 this time. Didn't matter. The hum of the place was different now. Still busy, still full, but the tension had gone out of the walls. In its place, something warmer had taken root. Less performance, more presence. A server in her mid-30s passed by, cracked a quiet joke to the table she was serving. A man laughed, deep and surprised, like it had been a while since someone made him feel seen during lunch. Near the window, a teenager in a varsity jacket helped an older man open a ketchup packet. No one told him to. Langston watched from his seat, hands folded over a napkin. No clipboard, no notepad, just eyes, and pride. Not the kind you wear loud, the kind that fills your chest without needing to say a word. The bartender, same guy from before, now greeted guests with actual tone in his voice. Real, human tone. He even walked over to check on a table near the back, laughing softly at something a customer said. Chase wasn't behind the bar. He was moving between tables now, refilling tea, wiping down edges of booths. No one else noticed. And then, as if pulled by instinct, Chase looked up, saw him, paused, but didn't freeze. He nodded once, then got back to work, offering a refill to a young woman with a toddler, asking how her day was going. The tone was easy, practiced, but not fake. Langston smiled to himself. A few minutes later, a plate arrived. Fried okra, sweet tea. He hadn't ordered yet. The server, a different one than before, grinned as she set it down. "Chef said this one's on the house," she said. Said it was legacy style. Langston took a bite. Crisp, warm, seasoned like memory. And as he looked around at the place he'd once feared was slipping away, he didn't see perfection. He saw care, in the way plates were carried, in the way chairs were reset with quiet attention, in the way laughter returned to corners that had gone still. Word had gotten out, not about a takedown, but a turnaround. Not about a CEO showing up, but a man who built something worth protecting. Langston picked up his glass, took a sip, and for the first time in a long time, it tasted just right. Let this story be your reminder. It costs nothing to treat people with dignity, but the price of disrespect can echo through walls you didn't know they built. Whether you're serving tea, or leading teams, character is revealed in the quiet moments, so make yours count. Share this story. If you believe respect should never be optional, drop a comment. What would you choose? An envelope for comfort, or one for change? Subscribe for more stories, where identity meets impact.